Providing insights to help you grow your business, improve yourself, and add value to those around you. You're listening to the Success is a Choice podcast, where you get a peek into the lives of industry leaders as they share their stories with you.
Hey, welcome everybody to the Success is a Choice podcast. I'm your host, Jamy Bechler, and today we have a very, very, very special treat for you today. We have the editor-in-chief of the Babylon Bee. If you're not familiar with the Babylon Bee, it is a satire site. It is hilarious, and it's gotten a lot of popularity, especially when it got suspended from Twitter. So we have the editor-in-chief, Kyle Mann, on the show, and they say laughter is the best medicine. So I guess I should address you, Dr. Kyle Mann. Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much. Honorary doctorate, I guess, because I definitely didn't finish college. So,
well, my family, we are Babylon Bee fans. In fact, fake news that you can trust is your tagline. That's where we get all of our news from. So, are we uninformed, misinformed, or reformed?
You know, I actually hear that people that, I'll hear from fans and stuff who say that they get their news from Babylon Bee, and not in the sense that like your grandma thinks it's real on Facebook, but in the sense that they don't go to a news site in the morning. They go to the Babylon Bee, and whatever stories we're covering, that's kind of how they know what's going on in the news. So they're able to kind of reverse engineer what the true stories are based on what our joke headlines are. So I don't think that's too far-fetched that you could actually be fairly informed by following just the Babylon Bee.
Well, it seems like no topic is off limits sometimes, but you started writing headlines. You started writing for the Babylon Bee, what, 6-7 years ago when it was essentially first founded, but you weren't like writing for Saturday Night Live. You weren't this stand-up comic in New York. You were in the construction business. How did you get to being from the construction business to where you are now, which is essentially Elon Musk's best friend?
It's one of those situations where you pinch yourself and just think you're dreaming all the time, because it's certainly not something I ever would have thought would have happened. But I mean, my journey was basically, I went to college for 2 years, left college because the costs were getting out of hand, and I didn't want to, start my adult life significantly in debt. And looked around for some work. I was getting married, and I found a truck driving job. And you can interrupt me if this is too boring, but I got a job driving trucks. And I went from the truck driving into warehouse management, just kind of by working hard and just really applying myself and giving the truck driving my all. I was kind of big on like just giving 110% every day at the truck driving job, and quickly kind of became a favorite driver for our different customers and contractors and stuff, and just tried to really go above and beyond what a driver would be expected to do. I mean, you get a delivery driver that shows up, and there's a big difference between the one who just like throws the package at your front door and the one who actually tries to provide a good experience to you and hide your package or whatever. So I was delivering construction materials, but I tried to develop a good relationship with everybody, and I was fast and responsive. And so I became a warehouse manager within like 6 months. And then after that, I became an inside sales rep. And from there, I went into outside sales. And eventually I was a director of regional sales for San Diego. And that was over a period of about 12 years of just kind of grinding day in and day out and working 12 and 14-hour days. And until I got there. Well, concurrently to this, about halfway through that, well, maybe not halfway through. I guess this would have been 8 or 9 years into my illustrious construction sales career. I uh, I saw this website called the Babylon Bee that launched, and that was kind of interesting to me. I grew up in the church, and I love humor and comedy, and I, I had been practicing some writing on the side. I'd been writing reviews for nerdy, video game blogs and board game, tabletop game, Warhammer type stuff. So I had been kind of honing that craft, and I really enjoyed writing. But there wasn't a ton of money to be made in it. Mostly if you try to start writing on the internet for blogs, you're writing for the exposure, which just means the website owner doesn't want to pay you. But I got, but I got lucky. I did have a few lucky breaks where I had blogs and such that had some funding behind them and would actually pay the writers. So I was able to make a little money on the side, which was, I don't know, that really set something off in me that I could create some words on a page out of nothing from my mind, and then like I'd get a check in the mail for it, and I thought that was really cool. So that was kind of addicting to try to find more stuff to write for. I wrote some, copy for different websites and all kinds of different, technical writing, all the way to reviews. And the video game industry actually really prepared me for what I do now at the Babylon Bee, because the video game industry is all like very fast paced. You might write 5 or 6 articles in a day, all, product releases and reviews and previews. And it's a fire hose of content coming out of the video game blogging industry every day. So we were covering everything. And so I'd have to get home from work, and, it's 6 or 7 at night, and then slam out 4 or 5 articles in an hour. And that really lent itself to my career at the Babylon Bee. So anyway, when Babylon Bee launched on March 1st, 2016, it came across my feed, and I was like, yes, a dry humor satire site targeted towards conservatives and Christians. And it was like everything I wanted in life, because I love The Onion, and I loved, This Is Spinal Tap and A Mighty Wind, and all of those just very dry satire, humor, all that content. So I fired off an article right away, and it got published the next day, and it was the Babylon Bee's first big viral hit. And Adam Ford, who launched the website, asked me if I wanted to write again, and then eventually asked if I wanted to become the head writer. And then a couple years later, he sold the site to an entrepreneur named Seth Dillon out of Florida. And as part of that process, I was offered the opportunity to come on board as a part owner and as the editor-in-chief. And so I jumped ship from my construction job. It was a bit of a risk. You got to tell your wife, like, we're leaving this cushy, nice outside sales job, and I'm going to be a writer. But she was very supportive, and it ended up working out great. So long story short, a lot of luck, a lot of opportunity that I seized on, God's sovereignty and providence, and working hard, I think, is the journey that I took from construction to where I am now.
Well, not just telling your wife you're going to be a writer, but a fake writer.
It's true. I'm going to write fake news. Well, I remember when I started writing for the Babylon Bee, we had just closed on our first house, and so now we're on the hook for these monthly payments, and San Diego's not cheap, and we got this house based on whatever salary I was making at the construction job. And then I was just, I was a little miserable. Like I worked hard, and I did appreciate everything the company did for me, but outside sales is such a fast-paced career. It's 14 hours, and you're getting home, and your brain is fried. You don't have anything left to give your family, and that was tough, and I did it. I stuck it out because it was for my family, but it was hard. And so that was like the day we closed on our house, was like the day the Babylon Bee launched, and I wrote the article, and then I told my wife, I was like, maybe someday this could be a career doing this, and she was like, writing. She's very supportive externally, like, yeah, whatever you want to do, but she told me later, like, she was just thinking, I don't understand how that would ever pay the bills.
Well, you said earlier, and it made me think, I love that you were 110, you were given 110% to your job previously. I love that. But it reminded me of a quote years and years ago. It was like quote of the year in Sports Illustrated. This quarterback for University of Illinois said, "I just go out and give 110% every game because you can't give any more than that." And I know 5 out of 4 people are bad at math, but I always think of like that was a Babylon Bee quote before it was Babylon Bee. Like that was it didn't make sense, but a lot of the things you say are taken from real life and they don't always add up, but that's kind of what satire is. And obviously you can talk about satire a lot better than I can. What is kind of satire for you? What's the site about? What if people haven't gone to the site, give us a little 30,000 foot view of the satire and the humor that the Babylon Bee has.
Yeah, so we're a Christian news satire site, and we cover the day's news. We cover commentary on everyday life and church culture and religion and politics and everything in between. So there's kind of no topic off limits for what we cover, but it's similar to The Onion. If you've ever read The Onion, you know that you're making up headlines that didn't actually happen. But the difference between us and just straight up fake news sites, you know, there actually are some fake news sites that get shared where they're not trying to write something funny, or they're not trying to write something that makes a point. They're just making stuff up, you know, just to try to get clicks. So the difference between that and what we do is that we're making up stories, but there's usually a point associated with it, you know. So that's what satire does. You know, the classic example is A Modest Proposal by Jonathan Swift. You know, where he was pointing to famine issues in Ireland, I believe. And he writes this insane essay like, what we should start doing is eating our children, you know. And he's not making this up just because he's an insane person, but he's doing it to call for change and to call people's attention to a problem that was going on. And so you do that by taking the argument to its logical conclusion, or writing something that's so absurd that people kind of have to sit up and pay attention. So that's what we do. You know, the modern form of satire that seems to work really well is kind of having that whole joke in the headline, and then people might click through, and we write a whole article about how exactly the story went down. So I say that it's not truth, but satire is like truth adjacent. You know, you're kind of creating this twisted Superman bizarro world of our world, and then our voice is that we're reporters commenting on that world. So that's kind of the dry reporter voice that we use at the Babylon Bee. Is, you know, we're not writing this really snarky, like this is our opinion piece, but we're going in there and just very dryly reporting, hey, these are the facts. This is what happened, you know, even though it's some story that we totally made up. And it's obviously to comment on something in the real world.
Well, it's all about the headlines, because that's why even when you look at Fox or NBC or CNN or whatever, people only read the headline. They don't click through the article anyways.
It's true. And it's been our great struggle. You know, it's we kind of it's weird. You know, we launched this website in 2016, but websites were a dying breed already, you know. And so the fact that we probably got in right under the door, right at the buzzer, before you can't really launch big websites like this anymore. Everything is now Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, Instagram. Like, that's the only thing that really goes viral is these pages. But we built this model where it's still the classic model of, we are going to write good content and hope that people come to our site. And social media spurred us on. You know, social media was a big vehicle for growth, that people could virally share our articles and click on them, and then hopefully we get some of that web traffic. But that model is dying. You know, Facebook's algorithm changes so much. People just, you can't rely on any kind of number of clicks on your website on a given day, because tomorrow Facebook might decide, yeah, I don't want anybody to see your articles anymore, which happens to us fairly regularly.
Well, you gained so much popularity on Twitter, and because it's such headline driven, it's such, you know, quick, boom, in your face type stuff. Then you guys got suspended, and you actually made an article and a headline later on, because Elon Musk is trying to buy Twitter. Obviously, he did buy Twitter, but I love the headline. It went something like, you know, Elon Musk could have saved $44 million just by realizing he could check out the Babylon Bee's website. He didn't need to buy Twitter to read the Babylon Bee.
Yeah, I remember that. Something about, yeah, what was it? Uh, yeah, Elon Musk is kicking himself after realizing he can read the Babylon Bee for free, I think.
Yeah, exactly. But that was a big deal. You guys got kicked off Twitter for a while, and you didn't apologize. You didn't delete the tweet. None of this stuff. You kind of took a stand. What was the thought process there? And I know that wasn't just you making that decision. You have a CEO, but what was the thought process of, hey, we're not going to delete this. We're not going to apologize, even though quote unquote cancel culture is coming for us.
Yeah, there wasn't much of a debate or decision-making process. It was very much, I don't know what the phrase is, like a God thing, if you want to say that, but we got the notification that we were suspended, locked out of Twitter, unless we reviewed the hateful conduct policy, deleted the tweet, acknowledged that we committed hateful conduct, including possibly threatening a marginalized group and calling for violence against an individual. And we get this email, and it's so smarmy and smug, like, hey, you did something bad, you need to go sit in the corner and think about what you've done. And the joke was, like, we called the biological male a man, and I understand there's a lot of ins and outs of this debate, and like there's sensitivity, and how do you address people? Do you address people like they want to be addressed, or what is our responsibility to communicate with people in the way they want to be communicated with? But we were parodying a news story that was going around, and we wrote the story, and we just said, you know what, like, all of us kind of said at the same time, we're not deleting this tweet, right? Like, we're not going to do this. And it was just, we were all, me and the other owners, there's three or four of us, we were all on the same page, just right away. And so, yeah, it wasn't, I don't know, sometimes you get the feeling that people want to get banned from social media because then they can complain about getting banned from social media. It was certainly not any kind of calculated decision where we sat down and said, all right, here's what we're going to do. We're going to tweet this, and then we're going to get banned, and then we can get more subscribers or something, or we can make this big ruckus and get Elon Musk to buy Twitter. Like, there was no calculation involved. We just said, oh, we're not deleting the tweet. So we might never have a Twitter account again. That was kind of we just resigned ourselves to the fact that we were never going to get back on Twitter. So that was kind of the thought process. There wasn't any, if that, it was an accidental moral stand, I guess, in some ways.
Well done. Way to take an accidental fake stand. I guess it wasn't a fake stand, just an accidental stand.
Yeah.
But a lot of people say that was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back with Twitter and Elon Musk and kind of tongue in cheek there. But Elon Musk is definitely a fan of the Babylon Bee. And a lot of, you talk to almost any podcaster, any radio host, any TV host, and the white whale out there is Elon Musk. Can we get Elon Musk on our show? That's our bucket list. You guys got him on your show. Now, it was last minute, but talk about that experience of getting the man on your show.
Yeah, that was an insane thing. That happened a little over a year ago. It was not last December, but the December before that. And we had a podcast assistant producer who kind of took it on himself to email a few people and see if they wanted to come on the podcast. And he was reaching out to some of the usual names that do the podcast circuit, but he kind of called me frantically on like a Thursday night or a Friday night, and he said, hey, I just DM'd Elon Musk, and he replied. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, I DM'd Elon Musk to see if he wanted to come on our podcast, and he said yes. And I'm like, and I'm just like, why did you DM Elon? Like, there was no conversation, there was no strategy or plan. This is a theme with us. We have no plan. So we started replying to him, and then he kind of said, well, yeah, fly out tomorrow and you can interview me, and then we said, okay, here's the studio that we rented, meet us here. And then he kind of like gave a ha emoji. So we didn't know if he was joking. And So we all we were sitting in the studio waiting for Elon Musk to show up. We hadn't heard anything from him. We're just like, all right, well, I hope he shows up. And then sure enough, him and his entourage show up like 15 minutes before, this Tesla pulls up in the parking lot or whatever. And we're like, oh, this is actually happening. Uh, so we were really nervous. I think you can tell when you watch the interview, I didn't know what I was doing. There was definitely moments of, I was like seeing stars, like I'm, trying not to lock my legs and faint or whatever, because I'm just sitting there like, is this really happening? And I actually didn't know a ton about Elon Musk. I wasn't like a fanboy that followed everything he did on Twitter or anything. I just kind of knew he was like had something to do with PayPal and SpaceX and stuff. But just knowing how monumental that moment was, and how far-reaching that interview would be, would be seen by 10 million people probably, was kind of a shock to us. But it was a great experience. Elon is he's a very soft-spoken guy, and you get the sense that he's very sincere when he talks about things. Like, he doesn't have a PR person that's sitting with him saying, no, say this or say that. He doesn't have any polished talking points. He just says what he thinks about something. And I didn't always agree with him, but it was really refreshing to see somebody of that stature who just spoke his mind. So yeah, you can watch the interview. It's on YouTube, and he talked for, I don't remember how long the interview was, a couple hours, and then we turned off the cameras and he kept talking. He talked to us for another hour. We should have kept the cameras rolling, but he just wanted to talk to us. And the very first thing that happened when he sat down was he said, "Tell me about the Babylon Bee." Like, he wanted to hear about us. It was really cool. So that was one of those things, like I said earlier, this career is a pinch myself, I'm dreaming type of career. And that was definitely one of those moments.
Yeah. He seems very like almost the everyday man, just the guy that you would have in your office that you might chat with. He seems like that, and then he's the richest man in the world or whatever, but he's slamming White Claws back yeah. And at one point during your interview, you asked him about a meme, and he's like the king of memes. He throws out these memes, and you didn't know what one of them meant. And what would be the percentage of Elon Musk memes that he puts out on Twitter that you fully understand?
I usually get what he's talking about. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes it doesn't hit for me, or sometimes it's something I've already seen, a while ago. But it's funny, he throws out something and I'm like, oh yeah, I saw that a year ago. But it's boom, 10 million retweets or whatever because he shares it. But that's, it's funny is he still interacts with Babylon Bee articles on Twitter and stuff. And if he just replies to a Babylon Bee article with a laughing emoji or clicks like on something, it's just boom, it skyrockets traffic for that article. And it's weird, the ones that he'll interact with too. It's not always like you'd think he'd reply to the political one or the, something about tech or whatever, but or something about him, if we do a joke about him. But he'll respond to like little church jokes that we'll do, or little family jokes, the silly ones. And I'm like, I don't know if that's a great article. And then I'm like, I don't know if we should publish that one. It's probably just a little filler. It's a little niche. And then he'll reply to it, and boom, we'll get a ton of views.
Well, when I think about your jokes or think about, Elon Musk memes, and I don't really understand them. I think back to your Atlantic interview. What was it, a year or 2 years ago, where the lady kept asking you to explain the jokes. And I know people like that'll read a Babylon Bee article or a headline and they're like, I don't get it. And it's like, well then, yeah, I get it why you don't get it. It's not for you then. When you're writing these headlines and these jokes, do you have an audience, or are you just writing whatever you think is funny for you?
It probably varies based on the headline. Like there is a sense, the comedian can no longer just write something in a vacuum, because the comedian has to be aware of algorithms and what people are talking about. And, it kind of sucks in a lot of ways, because you can't just write what's fun. You have to write what's going to get views. Because I could write a little niche joke about some, board game that I like, or some video game, and you'll hit a small audience, but and it'll be funny, but it's not going to get seen. And as a business, you have to get your article seen. So there is a sense where you have to kind of be aware of your audience. With Twitter, everybody's a comedian and everybody's tweeting memes as soon as something happens, which is a real challenge for us because like we have to take a little time to get our article out there. Like we have to write a full article. We have to get a Photoshop together. It has to look nice. And we also like, we don't want to respond to the news instantly. Like we don't like if Nancy Pelosi does something stupid or, you know, if Trump says something dumb, you know, God forbid, we have to like wait a second until that news kind of percolates and then people are talking about it. And then we can put an article out. But if we throw something out right away, 90% of our audience hasn't heard of it yet, you know, and then it's like, it'll die on the vine. But if you wait too long, then every joke has already been told. So you have to wait for that perfect moment where like the news cycle is starting to ramp up on something, but it's not old yet. And then you just got to get an article out there. And we pride ourselves on our response time with that because we do really try to go like, okay, this is hot. Get it out now, you know. And when something hits just right, I think like when the spy balloon popped, finally, after it crossed the Atlantic, we were like I'd been on Twitter and I saw someone tweet, the spy balloon has just been shot down. And I'm like, this is all anybody's going to be talking about for the next 6 hours, you know? And I think we got something out right away that was like, you know, military shoots down spy balloon because it was getting too close to Ukraine, you know, or something like that. And it was like this, bam, you know, that article went huge. It was big and viral because we hit it at exactly the right time. I think if we had waited another 20 minutes, that joke would already be out there or, you know, whatever. So, but kind of getting back to your question though, yeah, it's like my favorite jokes to write are the ones that are for me. And early on in the Bee's life, you know, that's why it got popular. And so I think we still have to do that. I think you still have to ignore the algorithm a lot and just write the joke that's true. You know, that's the very first Bee article I wrote, which I mentioned earlier, was the Holy Spirit unable to move through congregation as fog machine breaks, you know, and it was our first big viral hit, but like I wasn't writing it for a particular audience and I wasn't writing it thinking, you know, oh yeah, everybody's talking about fog machine, you know, or like everybody's going to resonate with this one. It was just a commentary on my own church experiences growing up and how I kind of didn't like the polished, you know, really clean worship style where you have all the produced lasers and fogs and light show and whatever. So I think you have to write something that's true to you, and you'll be amazed. You'll be amazed how many people it resonates with, even though you're not necessarily trying to hit a particular audience.
Well, and that's a lot of what, you know, satire, the irony of some of these jokes and satire is, you know, going back to the church thing, there's so many people out there that believe the Holy Spirit, let's say, is only moving if you have laser lights and drums and fog machines. There's other people that believe, well, that church is blessed if they don't sing the third verse of that song in the hymnal. You know, we're going to sing the first, second, and fourth verses, you know, and that's the church that's blessed. Like we put these external constraints on lots of things, and you guys kind of expose some of that in a humor way.
Yeah. And like that was a big debate at the time. I don't know how much Christians are still arguing about that. They probably are still arguing about that, but you know, and it's, again, I think like satire isn't taking a stand. Like satire doesn't take a stance and go, because a lot of people that don't understand satire, they'll read something that criticizes like that. And they're like, so what are you saying? What are you trying to say? That we should only sing old hymns with an organ and with an old lady playing the organ? Like they're just, are you saying instruments are bad? You know, and it's like, no, we're not saying anything. Satire criticizes and it deconstructs, but it doesn't really take a stand or it doesn't really care about you. It doesn't really care about what logical conclusions you draw from it. And you mentioned that Atlantic interview, and that's the reason, like, and I didn't plan that either. She just started asking me like, explain this joke, you know, and I'm like, the joke is the joke. That's what is there not to not understand? You know, read the joke. That's the joke. You know, the joke is that whatever. I gotta remember the one she asked me, like, you know, but I don't understand. Like she just did not get the humor, because to her it's like, well, what are you trying to say? You know, it's somebody who tries to. There's the old quote. I forget it. It's been attributed to a bunch of different people, but that like dissecting a joke is like dissecting a frog. You know, that you're gonna learn something, but you'll kill the frog in the process. And that's kind of like, it's like, I'm not going to explain jokes. Like, if you get them or you don't, like, and I'm not saying every joke we tell is gold, or like that I can't look back at a joke and go, yeah, that one didn't quite hit, or we should have done something slightly different. Whatever. We always look back at your work and say, I could have changed something here or there. But that's not like, that's an internal thing. That's not for like a journalist to pick apart a joke and you have to defend it and say, well, here's our stance on Ukraine. Ukraine's another example. That's one where, like, we criticize a lot of the things that the government's done with Ukraine, but we're not saying like, go Russia, and you get a lot of that where we'll kind of criticize the way that the government has handled Ukraine or has spent so much money in an unaccountable way when we have people here that need help, and then people will say, well, what are you saying? Did Putin pay for this article? And you're like, no, Putin's an idiot. Putin's an evil dictator. Like, that's not you're not taking a stand. You're dissecting something using the cutting tool of satire. So I don't remember what the question was, but hopefully that was helpful.
No, that was exactly the question. You answered it. Well done. Well done, Dr. Kyle Mann.
Thank you.
So do you have a whiteboard? Do you have something in your office that's like, all right, we've got to check off these boxes. We've got to be fair and balanced. All right, it's been 3 days since we talked about the other side of this. Do you feel any pressure that you have to kind of appeal to be funny for everybody? Or do you just, as they come, you throw them out there? Or are they like, hey, we've been hitting on Ukraine, or we've been hitting on X, Y, or Z way too much lately?
Yeah, there's no like systematic process or whiteboard, and I don't think satire should be equal opportunity. That's, you need to make fun of whoever's being an idiot, and sometimes the Democrats are being more idiots than the Republicans. I mean, the Republicans are idiots too, but like our worldview is, such that, like, obviously we're going to agree with conservative people more. So it's going to be harder to like, I'm not gonna mock a conservative for worldview when I agree with the worldview. All satire has that kind of position where you're, not that it takes a position, but kind of has that thing it disagrees with that you're mocking. So like, I'm not gonna, like, when it comes to church humor, I'm not gonna make fun of the Bible in a way that's like, oh yeah, the Bible's this, old book of fairy tales, put it in the fiction section. Because it's like, that's not what I believe. So why would I? It's weird. There's a double standard, because liberal comedy isn't equal opportunity. Like, they don't balance anything. You look at The Onion and they'll trash Republicans all day long and then do a little softball set. Not that they won't attack, Democrats sometimes, but typically it's more of a softball joke, So, and I think a goal of being equal opportunity robs your satire site of any kind of uniqueness, Like, if we could just, like, let's be fair and balanced. Let's write, a topic about, let's write one against Democrats and then one against Republicans, and we'll keep it nice and fair, and everybody's a winner. Like, an AI could do that, Like, we have a unique voice, and we kind of want to put that voice out into the culture, and then people start to kind of expect that from you. You read any other satire set, The Onion, Hard Times, whatever, they have like a very progressive bent, and they're going to write satire that sticks to that worldview. Not that you can't mock your own sometimes. Actually, the best way to mock your own is typically to mock your own for hypocrisy or ineffectiveness. And that's kind of, that's what we do. We'll make fun of Republicans who are hypocrites, and we'll make fun of Republicans who are like, one of our kind of go-to things is like, the Republicans shouting about how much they wish they could change this thing. It's like just kind of being these impotent losers who never fight for anything good and never defend anything true and beautiful. So it's like, we're not mocking them for what they believe. We're mocking them for how bad they are at defending it, or how bad they are at living it out. So I don't know. That's kind of the balance that we show. But ultimately, like, we want to tell the best joke, and that means we're making fun of one of our own. So be it. If that means that we're making fun of the other side, so be it. We'll probably make fun of the other side more, but we still write a lot of jokes about church culture. We make fun of people in church. We make fun of, we make fun of everyday life. We write a lot of jokes making fun of husbands being idiots, because we're husbands, who are idiots. And that's kind of, a lot of that's based on real life experiences. So.
Kyle, can you explain that? Can you explain that joke? I don't get that. I don't get that one about husbands. and being idiot.
Yeah.
Can you
The
explain
joke
that for
is
me?
that,
The
the joke is that husbands are idiots. Yeah.
I don't get that. Yeah, the joke is that you're a husband.
And you're an idiot.
You're a joke of a husband.
Yeah.
Is there a line that you don't cross, or is there an article you've put out there that you're like, ooh, I probably shouldn't have done that, or I should have done it differently?
The line that we shouldn't cross is, like, I think, like we were talking about the church humor and the Bible jokes. Like, we'll make fun of Christians for not being able to, for not living up to a biblical standard, or we'll make fun of Christians' misperceptions of the Bible. Kind of a common trope or motif that we'll do is, like, we'll take a modern church practice and kind of put it in the early church. So it's like archaeologists uncover, state of the art coffee machine from the early church, and it's like, we're making fun of what we've made church into this, like, modern hip thing by putting it in as a contrast to what biblical Christianity was. And it's loving and it's light and it's not too cutting or whatever. Or we'll do something that's a little more brutal about how Christians don't read the Bible or don't live up to the teachings of Christ. But what we won't do, and that's the line, is like I'm not going to make fun of the idea or concept of God. And if you read about The Onion a little bit, like, one of their founding principles for comedy was religion is stupid. That's, like, literally, if you go look that up, the founders were talking about what all their, like, precepts are for satire, and one of them was religion is stupid. So it's like, that's their presumption starting out. Well, our presumption is that, the Bible is true and God is real, and you need to believe in Christ and repent. It's like, so we're going to write satire that's more consistent with that. So I'm not going to make fun of the idea of God. We usually avoid, like, depicting God the Father. Like, we won't have God the Father say anything. Like, if we do a joke, like, we'll do a joke about God regrets, creating 80s hair metal or something like that, and in the article, we won't quote God the Father. We won't depict him in the picture. It's like we're kind of using God as this, like, to make this point about something that we dislike or whatever, but we're not going to actually put words in his mouth. It's clearly a joke, that kind of thing. So those are the kind of lines that we draw. And then in terms of ones that we've regretted, like, it's usually not like the big controversial ones that you would think of that we would regret. It's usually ones that you've never seen because they didn't get shared very much because people didn't get them. Like, I guess I'd rather have the ones where we kind of stepped in it a little bit and a lot of people were mad or whatever. Like, that, at least your satire was doing something, was saying something, that got people riled up. The ones that they just didn't make sense. Like, those are the ones that, like, I'll look at it and maybe I had a hand in it, maybe I didn't or whatever, but I'm looking at it and I'm like, doesn't this break apart really easily? Like, if you try to dissect the joke, it's like it falls apart pretty quick, and people, it didn't resonate, So those are more the ones that I cringe at, and I'm like, no, like, we could have done something else. The only one I can think of off the top of my head that definitely was well, I don't regret the article, but the timing. We did an early joke when Jan Crouch died, who was one of the owners or whatever, founders of TBN, the Televangelist Network. And the day she died, we wrote an article about. Yeah, I don't know. We were kind of being jackasses, I guess. we wrote an article that like all the prosperity gospel preachers were, like, confused. Like, how could she have died? Because she should have just been able to name and claim her health. This doesn't make sense, So we were trying to make fun of the Joel Osteens and the Benny Hinns and stuff of the world. But it was like hours after she died, and that ended up on Fox News the next day, and our website was only a couple months old, and we were just like I had no idea that people were I had no idea the reach of this website at that point. So that was a good lesson, because we just learned, like, oh, you got to be a little sensitive, even with people you disagree with. Like, just look at timing and be careful of that, and also just realizing the reach of our website. That was another big thing, was, like, realizing. I made fun of Kirk Cameron, like, called him a bad actor in one of our articles, and then he had me on his show years later, and he's like, so this hurt my feelings, And I'm like, I didn't think you'd ever see it. Like, we were just this little satire site, you know. But he's become a good friend, and he was a really good sport about it. So
How can, I mean, that should be untouchable. How can you make fun of Kirk Cameron, especially if you're a Christian site?
exactly, yeah, he's one of the sacred cows.
Mercy. Well, talking about sharing your stuff, you've had a number of things that have been shared so much by people that believe it, that you've been fact checked a number of times. Does that make you shake your head? Is it like a badge of honor? What are your feelings when your headlines and articles get fact checked?
Oh, it's so funny. I mean, it really, like, it's a badge of honor to get fact checked in a lot of ways, because it shows that, I mean, it's not a comment, like, getting fact checked is not a commentary on the satire, which is what the left tries to say, is like, oh, you were clearly trying to deceive, or, you know, your sense of humor is so bad that you wrote this article and nobody got it. Like, you know, it's a commentary on the target of the satire. Like, if you can't tell a fake news thing that we made up versus what Trump actually said or what AOC actually said, like, that's more a commentary on the person, because you're like, wait, that is something she would say, you know, like that. So it makes the jokes funnier to me. Like, we wrote that article that AOC went on The Price is Right and guessed that everything is free, and it was fact checked by Snopes, which is crazy. Like, what? Like, who thought this was real? You know, it doesn't make any sense. Like, even on the, like, even if you look at the Photoshop, like, it shows her badly photoshopped in there, and then it's like her score display or whatever says free. Like, they don't say free. Like, if you watch the show, they don't, like, say free. That doesn't make sense, you know. That doesn't make sense in the rules of Price is Right. But anyway, so, like, if you just think about it for 1 second, you're like, oh yeah, this is obviously a joke that's making fun of AOC. But now, if you Google that article, like, the first article is not, the first link that comes up isn't our article. It's the Snopes fact check, and it says, did Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez really go on The Price is Right and guess that everything is free? You know, fact check, false. And it makes the joke funnier. That, like, that's how people are introduced to it, is this very serious fact check over it. But I mean, all that to say, it is still a concern of ours, in the sense that Facebook uses certain fact checkers to determine which pages are sharing fake news, and then downrank those pages. So that's what we've seen, is that they pay USA Today to fact check articles. USA Today fact checks our articles, and then Facebook down ranks our page or whatever. And now, where our articles used to get tens of thousands of shares on Facebook, they get like 3. You know, it's like this drastic decrease because of the fact checks.
Well, not only do you have great articles and great headlines, but you have great videos. And, you know, we'll just sit and watch those as a family. And then we have some explaining to do sometimes with our son, Jalen, our 13-year-old. We have to explain. And so Babylon Bee videos have helped us have better conversations with our son. But we love your videos. And, you know, if people out there haven't watched the videos, I would highly suggest starting with The Californians Move to Texas. It's a series. It's 6 videos. We thought that was hilarious. But my question would be, when are you going to move out of California?
Yeah, it's a good question. We actually have another one coming out, spoiler, but we have a bonus video coming out from that series. All right, we're premiering it at Be Live in Dallas this Friday, which is going to be a blast. But we had another video that was the Beach Boys. I wish we all could leave California, and a little song parody. And then we have another Beach Boys song parody about fleeing California that's coming out at Be Live. Another one that's debuting at Be Live. So that's going to be a blast. You know, there's a little bit of a misperception about California, in that there's a lot of really dumb state policies. Obviously, the cost of living is higher. There's some trade-offs, you know, like the property taxes tend to not be as high in California because they make it up with the higher state income tax. You know, some other places have like this constantly ratcheting up property tax where they make up for not having a state income tax. So the government's always going to get you on some level. But obviously there's policies that are concerning when it comes to California that, you know, make it hard to raise a family. And I think if those ever got, like, if they ever banned homeschooling or something, or tried to force my kids into a public school, you know, that would be definitely a line in the sand. Like, okay, we're done. I mean, it's just slowly. It's the frog in boiling water. Like they just kind of slowly. Like I grew up here. My whole family grew up here. We're second or third generation here in Southern California, and it's screw the Democrats. Like you can't make me leave my home. This is my home. Like I'm going to fight for this place. And I don't know. I don't think. I don't blame people for leaving because it's like you got to go. Like the cost of living is high, and if you're in an area that's got a lot of crime, like what are you gonna like? I can't blame people for leaving, but at the same time, it's like but running away is not a conservative strategy, and it's not a conservative strategy that's going to work in the long term. Like you're going to flee to Texas, and guess what? In 8 years, Beto O'Rourke's finally going to win a race there, and now what are you going to do? Like I don't know. I don't like that conservatives have just been trained to go, well, I'm going to run away to a red state, and it's like, okay, what happens when they take over that? Because there's woke CRT crap in those schools, and they're training your kids and they're turning your kids against you. So we have to develop the muscle that like says we're going to be rebels and we're going to fight, and not. Obviously, in the short term, California is a lost cause, but in the long term, like decades and decades, things change, demographics change, ideas change, worldviews change. Can we fight and can we win this place? I would love to think so. And then also like it's beautiful. It's 70 degrees today, and I'm 45 minutes from the beach and an hour from the snow, and so I do love the place. It's like God created this wonderful place, and the Democrats are trying their best to ruin it. And then the other misperception is like I live in an area that's pretty conservative. As long as you get away from the downtown areas, you're going to find a decent 50-50 split for politics over most issues, even if a lot of people still vote culturally Democrat. So it's not, Californians moved to Texas. That couple that we depicted in there from California, they exist. They do exist. But it's not everybody here, and it's more of the people that are in Hollywood and San Francisco and stuff like that. So.
Well, it was very funny, and a lot of your videos are funny, and Kyle actually stars in some of them. He starred in a couple of our favorites of Twitter employee, going for her first job. Also when a college grad with debt comes to collect. I think you were the person that she knocked on the door and came to collect her money to pay off her debt. So, and you were a blue collar worker. So that's a pretty funny one, but there's a lot of funny ones. I definitely highly suggest you guys check those out. How many takes do those things take? I mean, does it take a long time to film one of those videos?
They call me One Take Kyle. The ones where I'm like looking at the camera and I'm reading teleprompter and I'm doing it very dry. Like we have a gun explainer video where I'm explaining how dangerous guns are. Like those, I can literally one take the whole thing because like I just have the dry voice down. I'm not a good actor, but I do have the very dry voice, and like I grew up on all the old mockumentaries and Monty Python, and like Monty Python is saying something totally absurd in a very serious voice, and taking it completely seriously. That is the Babylon Bee video brand of humor that works best for me. So whenever they need a guy, it's like we need a straight man who's just like saying things very serious. Like I'll do that role 100%. But yeah, I mean, some of them are much more complex, involved shoots, and we need lots of different angles, and you have to get a bunch of takes. Subscribers to our website get access to like bloopers and outtakes and all that, and that's a lot of fun to watch. But we have a freaking blast. We have a freaking blast shooting those things. Like we're just cracking up, and you'll see moments where we're just like trying to hold in the laughter, and you got to get through the take. And there was one video that we did. Sorry, I don't mean to take up all the time, but there was one video that we did that was like, here's one weird trick to not getting pregnant, and it was like, don't have sex. And then we just sat. So it was like a 3-minute video, but we say that in the first like 5 minutes or 5 seconds or whatever. It's me and Chandler, one of our actors, and we're just like being newscasters, and it's like, don't have sex. And then we just sit there for 3 minutes staring at the camera, completely straight faced. And I think we did that in one take. And we're just like, and I'm just biting my tongue, trying not to laugh. And she's like playing on her phone, and I like look at her, and I'm like looking around, and like cough, and there's people off camera all around us just like holding it in, like trying not to laugh because nobody wants to ruin the tick, you know. And then it ends, and everybody just bursts out laughing, like, I can't believe you guys pulled that off. Like, stare at this camera for 3 minutes, you know. So that was fun.
Well, in the gun one, my wife watched that one with me, and she doesn't really care about guns either way, but there were probably 3 or 4 times she turned to me and she said, "Is that true? Because you sold it. You sold it with your dry humor." She's like, "Is that really true?" Now
we got a lot. Well, we got hateful comments on that too. People like, you know, guns. Like, I think in the beginning of the video, doesn't it? It says like, before guns, you know,
nobody
before
died,
guns, there was no death or violence in the world. People are like, what? There was tons of violence before.
Well, you should have got fact check when you said, if it wasn't for this gun, Abraham Lincoln would still be alive today.
Yeah.
Fact check.
And people commented on that and were like, that's crazy. Lincoln wouldn't be alive. He'd be 200 years old. You know, like, that's just so funny.
The joke is the joke.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Dr. Kyle Mann, honorary doctor, laughter is the best medicine. Kyle Mann, we definitely appreciate your time. Love the stuff you're doing. I laugh a lot. I LOL actually often. So we appreciate that you keep up the good work for the sanity of our country, for everybody. So thanks so much for jumping on, and for everybody watching this, whether you're watching this live or listening to this later on the Success is a Choice Podcast Network. We appreciate it. And remember, until next time, remember that success is a choice.